Maita Basa, thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of Chat. Today we're joined by Dr. Mike Mavura, all the way from Stellenbosch, and we are going to be talking about systems, procedures, and how these can help support and sustain the creative sector. So thank you for joining us, Maita
We talking about your work and the amazing work you've done pieces and the role of cross borders when you talk about international relations. And then you were talking about the project you did where you traveled across Africa by bus all over, right? Southern Africa to be specific. And your whole idea there to understand some of the border issues, right? The non-tariff barriers that affect cross borders. Um, Tell me how that mapping of kind of folks and the creative sector. How do you tie all this into the creative?
I think we need to. I think we need to think differently. I think we, as creative people, what we have in abundance is imagination. So,
Right.
firstly, imagination is very, very important, and imagination is actually an emancipatory tool. If you use imagination, you can think how to emancipate yourself. So, I think for me, initially coming from politics and international relations and looking at Southern Africa or Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, as one region that is really dominated by politics and by states. And I started seeing, interesting stories or hearing interesting stories coming from Tanzania, from the DRC Congo, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, even from South Africa, Botswana, all these, independent artists, creatives who are trying to build institutions, from the ground up, independent of, ministries of, arts and culture, just young people building institutions for other young people to have space to create, to express themselves. And I looked at this from almost like a bird's eye view. So if you look at this, then you start seeing different things popping in different countries. And then using imagination, the idea was like, how can we connect all of this? So that firstly, there's a network. We just know about each other. We just know that we exist. And then after that, obviously, we have to build relations. We have to travel amongst each other. We have to know about each other's work. And this is where I think, moving from theory into practice, it's really, really important that despite all the barriers, despite all the, I know it's really expensive to travel in Southern Africa or in Africa, but we have to do it. We have to do it. If it means you can get on a bus from Zimbabwe to go to Zambia, do it and meet your fellow creatives, because this is about network building. In 5-10 years time, something will grow from this. I can imagine, if we come together like that, and we come together as a caucus, and then we approach SADC, and we say, this is who we are.
Right.
These are the numbers of everything that we have been doing. These are the numbers. We've got the data. We've got the data of, in terms of how many we are, the numbers, and we start really building the creative economy, because I don't think the creative economy actually exists in the sense that we think it exists.
There is a good colleague of mine who once said this. We are sitting in this high level meeting, and here I am with my work, thinking, I know this stuff, and I'm thinking, we need to talk about the creative economy and how it can improve livelihoods. You put on the accent, you switch the lingo, and he's sitting there, and he says, you're talking in a room full of people who have no idea that creatives is actually a career. You're sitting in a room of accountants, lawyers, doctors. They have no idea about creativity, let alone to assume the creative economy can actually contribute to the GDP. Are you insane? So he said to me,
so exactly, I think I like your point exactly that you're saying, because I think as creatives, sometimes we think around, just creating the product or the artwork or whether it's fashion brands, the clothes and things like that. But nobody has actually done the work to say, collectively, this is what the creative sector actually contributes to the GDP of Zimbabwe, to the GDP of South Africa, to the GDP of Southern Africa, so that when we approach politicians who really think, if we are being honest, they think the creative sector or the creative economy is the leisure and entertainment sector. That's where they think we belong. So that's why we are lumped up. If you look at most ministries, there's a Ministry of Arts and Culture, Sports and Recreation. You know,
No,
so we are.
Doctor, they actually have no idea where to put us. Let me tell you how often the creative and cultural industries have moved in Zimbabwe. They have no idea where to put us, only because they don't understand what it is that we do and how we contribute. So for them, it's an emotive thing, that is culture. Whereas anywhere else in the world, culture is a growing it's a growing
It's
sector.
a big industry. It's a big industry. But we don't have numbers. We don't have data. We're not really organized. I mean, have you seen how much we've been ignored in this crisis? You know, people are suffering in the creative sector, but we are not a stakeholder. We are not on the table. We are not on the agenda when governments decide which industry to bail out, because they don't know how much we contribute to the GDP. So we are not even in the picture. We're not even in the conversation. Even in South Africa, actually, even in South Africa, you know, where people might think, you know, things are very much in order or things are much organized. No, we're not.
And this is the thing, right? I completely agree with you. And I want to move our heads, because generally when Tigera and I are talking, we're thinking solution, results, no excuses. Because maybe the idea of us pursuing different spaces in academia is to prefer solutions to the table. And part of it is systems, procedures, connecting the ecosystem, you know, regional trade, encouraging movement of people. All these things work towards trying to solution for the creative sector. What I find so amazing is when it comes to talking about handing out money, grants, whatever, creative sector comes onto the table. When it comes to thinking of solutions that can help prevent the spread of COVID-19, nobody wants to pay creatives to give those solutions.
Of course.
Come on, right? You want to give us free money, but you don't want to invite us to the table as a salary. I'm just like, what is this, right?
Yeah.
I would say, you know, I don't know how many times I saw this. I saw organizations, many NGO organizations, many society organizations, putting out a call out, saying we are inviting creative and cultural sectors to bring in ideas. And I'm like, why is this a call out? Why isn't this come to the table? Let's ideate. Let's think. If you're a consortium, bring it to the table. Let's see how we can come up with solutions. But I'm just, you just hit a nerve. You just hit a nerve. I'm going to pose another statement that I got from your work as a bridge into another section of our dialogue. Is you said popular participation of ordinary citizens is very important when you talk about international relations. What do you mean by that? I know you spoke a little bit into it, but can you take us through that journey a little bit?
I think popular participation of people, if you just go back to the instructive case that I gave of Southern Africa or SADC, you know, the most important people are politicians and states. So they meet under the auspices of Southern Africa Development Community. It's supposed to be a community, but we don't know what they speak about. We don't know what they've really done and how it translates to ordinary people. We don't know. You know, I don't think anybody can tell us here, like, what does SADC actually, what has it done for us? So what I mean by popular participation of people, firstly, it's, can you make it so easy for cross-border traders, which is where I started with my study. Can you make it easy for them to travel, for example? But also, can we as the creative sector, that's why I did that trip, to say we are about forming a network. You know, can we know about who we are? Can we quantify what we do? Can we put together the data of this is how much the creative economy actually contributes to the GDP of Southern Africa? And then when we are, you know, that's organized, we can then approach them and say, this is who we are. Can we also participate, so that at every other SADC meeting that you have, we are also there? At every other African Union meeting or summit that you have, we are there, and we've got things to put on the agenda, because we are contributing to the GDP of Southern Africa and Africa immensely and you don't know about it. So bring us to the table, but we need to be organized. We need to go with facts. We need to go with data. We need to go with figures, and we need to go with, as a caucus. So that's what I mean by popular participation. It actually strengthens democracy, because us as creative people and with creative thinking, we can actually bring interesting creative solutions to some of the things that, SADC SADC or African Union tries to do,
And you know
But
what?
we're a long way from there. We're a long way from there.
No, we're not. We're not. We're not a long way from there. We're not. We're here having this conversation. And for me, that's already, I always say it starts with a conversation, right? And I get so excited when I talk to people that are beyond just the theory, right? And people that have actually enjoyed the practice of being a creative and understand how it's. So I'm excited. We're not almost there. We are there. The question is, what's next? And where we're building up our next conversation to. I know when we were talking back and forth, we had a common person in our midst who was Heaton, Dr. Heaton, who's now Dr. Cape Town, an amazing mathematician who did a study about indigenous knowledge and indigenous culture. How do you identify as being indigenous in Zimbabwe in 2019? What does it mean to you? And I think his work was primarily focused on Independence Day celebration. And his line of questioning was how much culture is represented at the Independence Day celebration. So the point is there are amazing people like that. They are amazing people like Dr. Mavura, who have done work, not theoretically only, but practically, right? What do we do with these people? Clearly, we don't know them, right? What do we do with you, Ethan, the likes of MM from Nigeria? What do we do with people like that? How do we connect so that we can bring this conversation to the AU? And how can we bring the conversation to the AU?
It's a very, very important thing, because it links to your idea of what are the next steps, So I think we need to build a network. We need to build a network of creative minds, but in different sectors and different skills. I've rarely met creatives when we meet, and I'm partly fault to this, but I've rarely met creatives when they meet we don't have a trade lawyer in the conversation, We don't have somebody who knows about international trade, or we don't have an economist in the conversation. We don't have a politician in the conversation. So I think the more we begin to know about each other's work, the more we begin to form networks of alliances. And you and me have spoken about this. There's something that we are still working on, where we want to form like a network of interesting people. Then we start with we're doing it. So can we approach the Minister of Arts and Culture in C.H.A T Coventry, for example? If you we need to leverage on these titles that are really meaningless, doctor or whatever. But I think these people, once they see like there are 5 doctors or whatever, and artists and people who are interested in seeing you, maybe they'll be like, okay, we better pay attention, something like that. Yeah. We approach them and we say, this is what we are. We are not a threat to you. This is what we think. This is what the creative economy is about. Can we work together?
I'm with it. I am absolutely with it. And it's not, I think sometimes when you consider creating networks, a lot of people think it's a lot of work, right? And your conversation is there's a need to value chains in the creative sector. In the medical sphere, there's a value chain. In corporate, value chain, right? The problem we have with creatives is as creators, sometimes we don't want to realize where we put our full stop. We need to know, if I'm a creator, if I am a sculptor or whatever I am as a creator, I could be brilliant with sculpting, but I'm not an advocate. I could be brilliant sculpting, but I'm not a writer. I could be brilliant with sculpting, but I am not the accountant. And if we don't create those value chains that feed into the sectors systemically, I just don't see how they'll grow. Neither do I see how, when I walk into the Ministry of Sports and Culture, say, Minister Coventry, we're here with our petition, how they'll take it seriously. Because it could lack in research depth, it could lack in analysis, it could lack in economic sounding. So value, that meets the next section of our discussion. What is your hope for Africa?
But Chenesa, I just want to add something quickly before you finish. I think there's something that's really, really important between the relationships between African creatives and African governments or African ministries of, especially the ministries of arts and culture on the African continent. We know, we have done research, we know most of the people who get appointed to these ministries actually do not want to be there. It's either seen as a demotion in South Africa. It's a demotion, it's like you failed you failed in the Ministry of Economics, or you failed in the Ministry of Police or whatever. We can kick you out of government, so we'll give you arts and culture. It's seen as a I'm telling you. I am telling you. So we've got people in power who are responsible for arts budgets who don't really want to be in that ministry. So these are not the people who are going to leave their ministries and actually do the work to come and interact and meet and form a network with creatives. We have to do that. It's a question of Muhammad in the mountain, who goes to the one. The mountain will not come to the Muhammad has to go to the mountain. And Absolutely. The way you approach them as well is important, because now we know we have to hold their hand and literally be like, minister, this is what we are doing, this is what it means, these are the numbers, it will look good for you in A, B, C, D. Maybe all you need to do is come and give a speech, but your presence is important for now. We need cultural diplomats in the same way that we need artists and creatives who are writing, and rightly so, creating works that critique the government, or write opinion pieces that critique the government. But we also need cultural diplomats who are going to bridge the gap between government and the arts industry, because most times that relationship is very, there's tension in that relationship. They don't trust us because they think all we do is criticize the government. They don't think we contribute much. There's a misconception from government about what the creative sector is. So we are going to need some level-headed people in between to act as diplomats and to do the diplomatic work of bridging that gap.
I'm with it, cultural diplomat. And I think, I was saying to someone, having spent about 6 years of my life in the creative sector, and every time I meet someone, there's this constant question, what do you really do, right? And if I creative, people are like, so you're telling me you're not practicing law to be a creative? Do you know how upset I get? Because I take being a creative as a profession. I take it seriously. In some of the hardest work I've ever had to do. Forget the practice of law, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, after all these years of us amassing time to understand this sector, right? Even from a legal lens, a corporate lens, how come no one respects a creative? How is it that people will not take creative seriously? What do you think?
That we are not taken seriously. I think because firstly, we are lumped with all sorts of things. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, no disrespect, but what is it called? The Ministry of Arts, Culture, and what? Sports and Recreation, right? So, within the same budget, you've got somebody who wants to give money to theater and basketball. They want to give money to the opera, and they want to give money to soccer. We are in too big a lumped category for us to actually. We need to. I think there's a need for us to actually differentiate and do qualitative work around. This is what the creative sector is. These are the numbers. We don't have numbers, and without numbers, without data of actually that, that actually tells that this is what is. That we are contributing not only to the Zimbabwean GDP or to the Southern African GDP or to the African Union GDP, but also the relations that we have, not only on the continent, not only within SADC, but overseas. Zimbabwe, for example, goes to the Venice Biennale. What does that mean for Zimbabwe? What does that mean for Zimbabwe's image, international image?
Do you know, when you talked about the Zimbabwean artists, I went to see Mishek's work.
Yeah, Asambu, okay. Yeah.
And this man is doing amazing work, by the way, right? Amazing work. And seeing how art and culture is celebrated everywhere. In Zimbabwe, we would rather cover a story about someone going to a rural area over this amazing piece of work or piece of art that is expressive. I think it's part of the reporting structures, and our priorities are in the wrong place. But the moral of what I'm trying to say is we can't be under sports, because when you have a ministry, every ministry has an agenda, right? And when you have an agenda, you can't have a grouped agenda. Culture, creativity, sports, three different things.
They're different things.
It's like writing a thesis without an hypothesis. So when I start off as a minister making my work plan, how do I make a work plan that touches on culture, that touches on sports? It is virtually, I mean, from an academic lens, even from a professional lens, it's impossible, because the ball, it needs a laser focused, a directed kind of energy. So the whole idea there is perhaps creative and cultural industry needs to be its own ministry. But for that to happen, what you are saying is we need the numbers, we need the research, we need the connected, we need to prove our case, just like with anything. I like it a lot. So, I mean, tell me, after all this, what is your hope for Africa?
It's actually my hope for Africa, I'm actually excited about the things that are happening on the continent. You know, if you look at my specific field, you know, visual arts, for example, you know, there is a whole movement around young people building institutions, pop-up spaces, project spaces that are coming up. But also what I like is that even away from, like, you know, visual studies or visual arts, there are all these people, you know, these tech hubs that are coming up, you know, the Motor Republics, you know, the hives, you know, all these things, the tech hubs that are mushrooming on the continent. That is super exciting for me. But also we've got another thing that we have to think about as a continent, which is around futuring Africa. So if you look at our numbers, you know, if you look at our numbers on the continent, by 2035 to 2040, 50, the dates, the years are different, but the population of the continent will be around 1.8 billion going upwards, you know. We will have, believe it or not, and I know you know this, but by at least 2040, the population of the African continent will be more than the population of India or the population of China.
Yeah.
And we've got a demographic dividend, because most of these people, almost half, will be under the age of 25. Now, what are they going to be consuming? What are they going to be entertained by? You know, what kind of education are they going to be having? You know, healthcare. So this brings opportunities for all sorts of things. But, you know, the democratic dividend is not a given. It's a potential. If you don't maximize it, if you don't do something about it, you can lose it. And there are interesting moves that I've seen in the last months, or, you know, 2-3 months or so, that I'm a bit worried about. You know, have you seen what Netflix is doing?
You know what?
Sono.
Can
I finish?
Yes,
Netflix is seeing the numbers, and they've realized there is a need for African stories. I mean, the world is, what can Hollywood tell us anymore? You know, we've seen all the CIA, FBI movies already. So the new stories, the stories that have not been told, are on the African continent. And Netflix has seen the numbers, it has seen the you know, the demographics, and it has seen that this is where it's at.
Yes.
So Queen of Sono is there. There's Blood and something. There's another series of South Africa that's now there. There's the Cook-Off from Zimbabwe on Netflix. And we are watching this. We should be worried. We should be like, what is happening here? You know? Because
the problem with it is, you know, sometimes when you I always say the problem with Enlightenment is it's a curse. Enlightenment is, because when I look at these things, when I look at it's penetrating, I look at it as a problem, because our content that we should be putting on our platform, and we should be putting it on our platform. So when I look at I am so aggrieved by it. But when you try to explain it out loud, people are like, "No, you're a hater." I'm like, no, I'm concerned. If they're going to annex Africa and take all our content, where are we gonna put our content? How are we gonna celebrate our content? How are we gonna grow our market if we're already penetrated by Netflix?
Yeah. And I mean, we should do the China model. I mean, just copy the Netflix model for an African audience. We will have we've got the audience. We've got the, let's do the Apple and Huawei story. Huawei was not, there was nothing called Huawei, 20, 30 years ago that was really significant. But right now, if you go to any mall, there's you see an Apple store and you see a Huawei top product next to it. And we need to do the same. We need to have a platform that will allow Africans to tell their own stories. We've got the audience. I mean, if you look at the numbers are really where it's telling. Nigeria will have a population larger than the United States of America.
Exactly.
By 2040. It is crazy to think of, we're going to have 6 cities that have got more than 10 million people. Johannesburg, Addis Ababa, it's crazy.
It doesn't make sense because you know what? Do you know? I'm completely excited. In fact, I'm hyperventilating. I think because part of it is commodifying. Remember the lecture, commodifying the African culture.
Commodifying African culture. Yeah.
We have been. I don't know if we understand this. If people think about it, the basketball culture is an American culture that has become a global culture. It will never be African. It's American. It's an American culture, and they've commodified it because every other person I know wants to buy Jordans. Jordans have commodified a culture of basketball and made a product, a sub-product. What we are simply saying is, how do we commodify our culture, make it a product that we put onto the world market and the world consumes from our perspective, our stories, our methodologies, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm not going to hold you back. We're almost at 6 o'clock. I think
you need to research. I think you need to reschedule. We need to do another one.
No, I'm on it. You know what?
Okay.
I'm going to you know this, because I think I'm looking at these amazing comments and I think everybody's excited because Dr. Mavura, there's nothing more satisfying to my soul than a person speaking from research and experience. I think very few times do we get a person who understands the creative sector from a perspective that they can share it in a very practical way. So what you have done and what we need to continue doing in our project that we're working on is bringing these voices, that cross-sector voices, that can package the creative sector from a professional lens as well as from a practical on-the-ground lens. So of course I schedule because I feel like the people are hungry. Listen, look at these comments. The people are agreeing to what you're saying, but you're not talking from the air. You are talking from facts. Exciting stuff. We're going to reschedule. Tell me your parting shots.
Oh, there are quite a lot. There are quite a lot. I think we have to be careful about this demographic dividend. It can be a dividend or it can be a curse. And I think we need to be really, really careful about that. I also think we have to reevaluate our relationship with China, to be honest. I don't think we are maximizing on that at all as creatives. China is a big, big, big market for us. And I don't think we've done, the Chinese, it's almost like one-sided. The Chinese are getting all the benefits from their relationship with Africa, and we are not really benefiting from that. And I think it's something that we can discuss also in the next session.
I don't know. We're gonna have to actually figure out how to make our own personal series because I am intrigued and I'm seeing this. We're gonna find a platform where you and I are going to co-chair because I think that's how strong we get. So we co-chair and bring in other voices. We grow this pie and we start constructing document papers that will sustain our thinking, our philosophies. And this is how we contribute to academia, which academia will contribute to policy. And this is how we'll reach out to people and grow this African creative sector Guys, you know, I don't want to sound like a cliche. You can't grow something when you seed.
Yeah.
You can have a seed. If you don't plant it, if you don't water it, it will never grow. So we have skills. So if you think about the skills in the creative sector, they present the seed. Now what we are saying, a systemic approach, is we now need to water it. We now need to have the conversation, get data, gather the data, have the doctors here write the papers, reach out, go to the AU, go to the ministries. Collectively,
Yeah.
we can. But I will
We
tell
can.
you, Dr. Mavura can't do it alone, but together we can. Dr. Mavura, it's been wonderful. It's been so
Thank you so
wonderful.
much. Thank you so much.
I
Looking
will.
for the next one, and thanks
Oh,
to everyone who tuned in. Who tuned in to watch. Thank you.
thank you, guys. Love you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye, Doc.
Cheers. Bye.